Dr. Maya Rodriguez had been working in the Canadian wilderness for 8 years, but she had never heard anything like the sound that split the October sky that morning. She was checking on a family of bears preparing for winter when the entire forest seemed to shake. Birds exploded from the trees in panic, and even the massive grizzly she'd been observing looked up with concern. The sound wasn't like thunder or a plane crash. It was deeper, more metallic, like the world's largest bell, being struck by a giant hammer. Maya felt it in her chest, in her bones. Her equipment readings went crazy for a moment before settling back to normal. Being a wildlife doctor in this remote part of northern Canada meant she was used to strange things. Its meteor showers, unusual weather patterns, even the occasional military exercise. But this was different. Something told her she needed to investigate. Maya packed her medical kit and emergency supplies into her backpack. The sound had come from the direction of Crystal Lake, about 3 miles through dense forest. She'd been to that area many times while tracking animal migration patterns. It was isolated, surrounded by rocky cliffs and thick pine trees. If something had crashed there, she might be the only person who would find it for days. The hike took her 2 hours. The closer she got to the lake, the more unusual things became. Small animals were acting strange, running in circles or sitting completely still. Her compass started spinning wildly. Even her radio began picking up weird static that sounded almost like whispers. When Maya finally reached the ridge overlooking Crystal Lake, she stopped dead in her tracks. The lake, which should have been partially frozen this time of year, was steaming. Something large and dark sat half-submerged in the center, creating ripples that moved in patterns she'd never seen before. She pulled out her binoculars and focused on the object. It wasn't a meteor or a plane. The surface was smooth and curved, almost like polished metal, but it seemed to shift color in the afternoon light. Blue, then silver, then something that wasn't quite either. Maya's scientific mind kicked in. This could be a military aircraft she wasn't familiar with, or maybe some kind of experimental technology. But deep down, something told her this was neither of those things. She made her way down to the lake's edge, moving carefully over the rocky terrain. The air felt different here, charged with an energy that made her skin tingle. As she got closer, she could see that whatever had crashed had created a perfect circle of melted ice around itself. The water was warm to the touch. The object was massive, easily the size of a small building, but its design was unlike anything she'd ever seen. There were no sharp edges, no visible seams or windows. It looked like it had been grown rather than built, organic curves that flowed into each other like a sculpture made of liquid metal. Maya was circling the shoreline, just trying to figure out how to get closer when she heard it. A sound that made her heart stop. It was crying, but not human crying. This was something else, a keening wail that spoke of pain and desperate need. She didn't hesitate.
Maya waded into the warm water,
her boots splashing as she moved toward the craft. Up close, she could see that part of its surface had been damaged. There was an opening, jagged and dark, where something had torn through the smooth exterior. The crying was coming from inside. Maya pulled out her flashlight and shined it through the opening. What she saw changed everything she thought she knew about the world. A figure was hunched in the corner of what looked like a control room, but everything was wrong. The walls curved impossibly, covered in symbols that seemed to move in her flashlight beam. Equipment that looked like it was made of crystal and light was scattered everywhere, some of it still glowing faintly, but it was the figure that made Maya's breath catch. It was roughly human-shaped, but taller, with limbs that were too long and graceful. Its skin had a blue tint that seemed to shift like water, and when it looked up at Maya's light, she saw eyes that were large and dark and filled with an intelligence that was definitely not human. The being tried to stand, but collapsed. Clearly injured, made more sounds, not quite words, but definitely communication. There was desperation in its voice, a pleading quality that transcended species. Maya's medical training took over. Injured was injured, human or not. She pulled herself through the opening and into the craft, her hands already reaching for her medical kit, the being watched her approach with what she could only describe as hope. It pointed weakly at symbols on the wall that were blinking red, then gestured frantically at the empty space around them. Maya didn't understand the technology, but she understood the emotion. This being was looking for someone who wasn't here. As Maya knelt beside the injured creature, she noticed something that made her heart ache. Mixed in with the strange symbols on the walls were what could only be pictures, images of the tall being with a much smaller figure. Tender scenes that were unmistakably those of a parent with a child. The being grabbed Maya's hand with surprising gentleness. Its skin was warm and smooth, and Maya felt something she couldn't explain, like emotions that weren't her own flowing between them: sadness, fear, and overwhelming love for someone who was missing. Maya looked into those large alien eyes and made a decision that would change both their lives forever. She couldn't understand the being's language, but she understood its need. Someone was lost out there in the wilderness, someone small and helpless. And this mother, because Maya was certain now that this was a mother, was dying from worry as much as from her injuries. Maya nodded and squeezed the alien's hand gently. She didn't know how, but she was going to help find whoever was missing. The being seemed to understand, and for the first time since Maya had found her, something like peace crossed her features. As Maya began treating the alien's wounds with her medical supplies, she realized that this was just the beginning of the most incredible story of her life. Somewhere out there in the vast Canadian wilderness, a child was waiting to be found. And Maya was going to make sure that happened. The sun was setting over Crystal Lake as Maya worked, painting the sky in brilliant oranges and purples. She had no idea that she was about to become part of the most important rescue mission in human history. Maya barely slept that first night. She'd set up her emergency tent on the shore of Crystal Lake, close enough to check on her new patient, but far enough to give the alien mother some space. Every few hours, she'd wade back into the warm water and climb through the opening in the craft to make sure the being was still alive. The alien, who Maya had started thinking of as Luna because of her pale, silvery skin, was stronger than she looked. Despite her injuries, she was constantly trying to communicate. She would point at the damaged walls of her ship, then gesture wildly at the forest around them. Sometimes she would make soft sounds that were almost like singing, but Maya could hear the sadness in them. On the second day, Maya brought her laptop and some basic drawing materials. She wasn't sure if Luna would understand, but she had to try something. When Maya showed her the blank paper and pencil, Luna's large eyes lit up with something that looked like relief. What happened next amazed Maya. Luna took the pencil with her long, delicate fingers and began to draw. Her movements were precise and graceful, creating images that were both alien and somehow familiar. First, she drew what looked like the craft before it was damaged. Then she drew herself, tall and flowing. And then, with obvious love and care, she drew a much smaller figure. The small being in the drawing had the same general shape as Luna, but was clearly young. Maya could see it in the proportions, the way Luna drew the little arms reaching up, the large eyes that seemed even bigger in the smaller face. This was definitely a child, and from the way Luna touched the drawing so gently, this was her child. Maya pointed to the small figure and then to herself, trying to show that she understood. Luna nodded eagerly and began drawing more. She showed the two of them together, the larger being holding the smaller one. Then she drew what looked like an explosion, with the small figure separated from the large one, surrounded by trees and mountains. Maya's heart sank as she understood. During the crash, Luna's baby had been thrown from the ship. The little one was somewhere out there in the wilderness, alone and probably scared. Maya looked at Luna and saw something that needed no translation. This was a mother's worst nightmare, and it was real. Maya spent the rest of that day expanding her search area around the lake. She hiked through thick pine forests, calling out. Even though she had no idea what sound the alien child might make, she checked every cave, every hollow tree, every sheltered spot where something small might try to hide. The forest was getting ready for winter. Nights were already dropping, below freezing. Whatever technology the alien child might have for protection, Maya knew that time was running short. She'd seen too many animals struggle to survive in these conditions, and they were adapted for this environment. On the third day, Luna surprised Maya by trying to leave the ship. The alien mother had been healing faster than any human would, but she was still weak. Maya watched nervously as Luna pulled herself through the opening and onto the shore. Her long legs were shaky, and she had to lean on Maya for support. But her determination was unmistakable. Luna pointed to the mountains surrounding the lake and made urgent sounds. She was trying to tell Maya something important about where to search. Maya brought out the paper again, and Luna began drawing a map. Her version didn't look like any human map Maya had seen, but she could make out the basic shape of the lake and the surrounding peaks. Luna drew a line from the ship that curved toward the eastern mountains, then made a series of marks that could have been trees or rocks. At the end of the line, she drew a small circle, and then what looked like a cave or hollow space. She pointed to this drawing and then to the mountains, her meaning clear. The child was somewhere in that direction. Maya studied the drawing and realized Luna was showing her the trajectory the child would have followed when thrown from the ship. Using her knowledge of physics and the local terrain, Maya could narrow down the search area significantly. It was still a large area to cover, but it was better than searching randomly. That afternoon, Maya hiked toward the eastern mountains, with new hope. She'd left Luna with extra water and some food that the alien could tolerate, along with Maya's emergency radio in case something went wrong. Luna had watched her leave with trust in her large eyes, and Maya was determined not to let her down. The terrain in this direction was rougher, with steep, rocky slopes and dense forest. Maya moved carefully, calling out and listening for any sound that might be a response. She checked every likely shelter, every protected spot where an injured child might seek refuge. As the sun began to set on the third day, Maya was getting desperate. She'd covered most of the area Luna had indicated, but found nothing. The temperature was dropping, and Maya knew that even with alien technology, a small child couldn't survive much longer in these conditions. Then she heard it. A sound so faint, she almost missed it, carried on the evening wind. It wasn't quite crying, not quite singing, but it definitely wasn't any animal Maya knew. The sound seemed to come from somewhere up ahead, where the forest gave way to bare rock and cliff faces. Maya's heart raced as she climbed toward the sound. She was getting close to something, and for the first time in 3 days, she felt real hope. Luna's child was out there, and Maya was going to find her. The sound came again, stronger this time, and Maya broke into a run despite the rough terrain. Tomorrow would bring either the greatest rescue of her life or the most heartbreaking failure. But tonight, she had hope, and that was enough to keep her going. Maya followed the sound as darkness fell over the mountains. Her flashlight beam danced across the rocky terrain as she climbed higher, her heart pounding with a mixture of hope and fear. The sound came again, weaker this time, but definitely real. Something was up there in the cliffs, something that needed help. The weather was turning bad fast. Thick clouds rolled in from the north, bringing the kind of storm that could dump 3 feet of snow in a few hours. Maya had seen these storms before, and she knew she needed to find shelter soon, or risk getting trapped in the open. But she couldn't give up now, not when she was so close. The sound had to be Luna's child. After 3 days of searching, Maya refused to believe it could be anything else. As fat snowflakes began to fall, Maya spotted something that made her pulse quicken. There was a cave opening about 50 feet up the cliff face, partially hidden by overhanging rocks. It wasn't visible from below, which explained why she'd missed it during her earlier searches. The entrance was just big enough for a person to squeeze through, and Maya could see faint traces of disturbed earth around it. Getting to the cave meant a dangerous climb in worsening weather, but Maya didn't hesitate. She'd been rock climbing since college, and her years in the wilderness had kept her in good shape. She found handholds in the rough granite and began to work her way up, her backpack making the climb more difficult, but carrying supplies she might desperately need. The wind picked up as she climbed, and snow began falling harder. Maya's fingers were getting numb despite her gloves, and she had to pause several times to regain her grip. But the sound came again from inside the cave, urging her on. Someone was in there, someone who needed her help. When Maya finally pulled herself over the lip of the cave entrance, she was breathing hard and covered in snow. She clicked on her flashlight and crawled into the narrow opening, not sure what she would find. The cave was deeper than it looked from outside, stretching back into the mountain with natural chambers carved by water over thousands of years. But what caught Maya's attention immediately was the warmth. Despite the storm outside, the air in the cave was surprisingly comfortable. Maya crawled deeper into the cave system. Following her flashlight beam and listening for any sound, the cave branched into several passages, and she had to choose which way to go. She called out softly, hoping not to frighten whatever was in here. That's when she saw the light. It was faint, just a soft blue glow coming from one of the side passages. Maya had never seen anything like it in nature. The light pulsed gently, almost like a heartbeat, and seemed to be coming from around a bend in the tunnel. Maya squeezed through the narrow passage, her excitement growing with each step. The blue light got brighter, and she began to hear a new sound. Not crying or calling, but something that sounded almost like a lullaby. Soft and musical, and definitely not human. When Maya finally rounded the corner and saw the source of the light, she stopped breathing for a moment. Wedged into a natural alcove in the rock wall was something that looked like a giant silver egg, about the size of a bathtub. The entire surface glowed with that soft blue light, pulsing in a steady rhythm. Through the translucent shell, Maya could see movement inside, small, dark shape that stirred occasionally. This had to be some kind of protective pod, like a high-tech baby carrier that had kept Luna's child safe during the crash and the days afterward. Maya approached carefully, not wanting to damage whatever systems were keeping the little one alive. Up close, she could see that the pod was incredibly sophisticated. The surface wasn't solid metal, but something that seemed almost alive, changing opacity as she watched. She could see the child more clearly now, curled up inside like a human baby in the womb. But with the same long limbs and pale skin as Luna, Maya's medical training kicked in as she examined the pod. She could see what looked like monitoring displays built into the surface, showing vital signs and other information in the same flowing symbols she'd seen in Luna's ship. Most of the displays showed steady, healthy readings, but one was flashing red. The blue light was growing dimmer as she watched. The pod was running out of power? Maya realized with growing alarm that the child's life support system was failing. She had no idea how much time was left, but the weakening light and the flashing warning signals told her it wasn't long. She had to get the child out of the pod and back to Luna quickly. But first, she needed to figure out how to open the pod safely. Maya ran her hands over the smooth surface, looking for some kind of release mechanism. The material was warm to the touch and seemed to respond to her presence, the glow intensifying where her hands rested. Suddenly, the pod began to change. The solid surface became more transparent, and Maya could hear the child's breathing, soft and rapid like a frightened animal. The little one was waking up, probably sensing that something was different. Maya spoke softly, the way she would to any scared baby. "It's okay, little one. I'm here to help. Your mama sent me to find you." She had no idea if the alien child could understand her words, but her tone seemed to have an effect. The movement inside the pod became less agitated. The pod continued to change parts of the surface, becoming flexible and soft. Maya realized it was preparing to open on its own, responding either to her presence or to some programmed sequence. She got ready to catch the child, pulling blankets from her backpack and preparing to move fast once the pod opened. The storm outside was getting worse, but inside the cave, Maya felt a sense of triumph. She'd found Luna's baby, and the little one was alive. Now she just had to get them both safely back to their mother. As the pod began to split open with a soft hissing sound, Maya prepared for the next phase of the most incredible rescue mission of her life. The adventure was far from over, but for the first time in days, Maya believed that this story might have a happy ending. The pod split open like a flower blooming, releasing a gentle mist that smelled like rain and starlight. Maya held her breath as she reached inside, her hands trembling with anticipation and fear. What if the baby was hurt? What if she did something wrong? Her fingers touched something incredibly soft and warm. The alien child was smaller than Maya had expected, about the size of a human newborn, but with delicate features that were clearly not of this world. The baby's skin had the same pale, silvery quality as Luna's, and tiny hands reached up toward Maya with surprising strength. When Maya lifted the child from the pod, something magical happened. The baby's skin began to glow with the same soft, blue light as the pod, and Maya felt a wave of emotion that wasn't her own. Peace, curiosity, and a deep sense of safety flowed through her mind. The baby was communicating with her, not through words but through feelings. Maya wrapped the little one in her warmest blanket, amazed at how the child seemed to understand that she was there to help. Those large, dark eyes looked up at her with intelligence that was both alien and completely familiar. This was a baby, regardless of what planet she came from, and Maya felt the same protective instinct she'd feel for any child in need. The storm outside had gotten worse while Maya was in the cave. Snow was falling so hard she could barely see 10 feet in any direction. Getting down the cliff safely with a baby would be almost impossible in these conditions. But Maya knew she couldn't wait for the weather to clear. Luna was waiting, probably, sick with worry, and the reunion needed to happen as soon as possible. Maya rigged up a makeshift baby carrier using her backpack and some climbing rope. The alien child seemed to enjoy being close to Maya's warmth, snuggling against her chest and making soft sounds that were almost like purring. Despite everything that had happened, the baby seemed remarkably calm and healthy. The climb down was the most terrifying thing Maya had ever done. Each step had to be perfect, each handhold tested carefully. The baby stayed quiet during the descent, as if she understood the danger they were in. More than once, Maya's foot slipped on the wet rocks, but somehow she managed to keep them both safe. By the time they reached the bottom of the cliff, Maya was exhausted and covered in snow. But the hardest part was still ahead. She had to hike 3 miles through the storm to get back to Crystal Lake, carrying precious cargo that couldn't afford to get cold or wet. Maya pushed through the forest as fast as she dared, following landmarks she knew by heart even in the blizzard. The baby stayed warm against her chest, occasionally reaching up to touch Maya's face with tiny fingers that seemed to glow in the darkness. After what felt like hours, Maya finally saw the warm glow reflecting off the lake through the trees. Luna's ship was still there, its damaged hull creating strange patterns of light on the falling snow. Maya had never been so happy to see anything in her life. She waded into the warm water, calling out to let Luna know she was coming. The response was immediate. Luna appeared at the opening of her ship, and even from a distance. Maya could see her whole body language change when she spotted the bundle Maya was carrying. What happened next was something Maya would remember for the rest of her life. Luna let out a sound that was pure joy, a musical cry that seemed to make the very air around them shimmer. She moved faster than Maya had seen her move since the crash, practically flying through the water despite her injuries. When Luna saw her baby, alive and well in Maya's arms, the transformation was incredible. The pale blue glow of her skin intensified, until she seemed to be made of starlight. Tears that looked like liquid silver ran down her face as she reached for her child with shaking hands. Maya carefully transferred the baby to Luna's arms, and the moment mother and child touched, both of them began to glow brighter. The baby made happy sounds Maya had never heard before, reaching up to touch her mother's face with obvious love and recognition. Luna held her child close, rocking back and forth and singing something that sounded like the most beautiful lullaby ever written. The baby's glow synchronized with her mother's, creating patterns of light that danced across the water around them through their shared emotional connection. Maya felt Luna's overwhelming gratitude and relief. The alien mother looked at Maya with tears still flowing, and Maya didn't need words to understand what she was feeling. This was a mother's joy at having her child returned, magnified by days of fear and uncertainty. Luna reached out with one hand and touched Maya's arm, and suddenly Maya's mind was filled with images. She saw Luna's home world, a place of crystal cities and floating gardens. She saw Luna's people, tall and graceful beings who lived in harmony with nature and technology. And she saw how much Luna's child meant not just to her, but to their entire civilization. The baby was special somehow, important to Luna's people in ways Maya didn't fully understand. But she didn't need to understand everything to know that she had helped save something precious and irreplaceable. As the storm raged around them, three unlikely friends stood together in the warm water of Crystal Lake. Luna continued to hold her child, occasionally looking at Maya with gratitude so deep it made Maya's eyes water. The baby seemed content to be back with her mother, but she kept reaching toward Maya too, as if recognizing the human who had saved her life. Maya realized that she had become part of something bigger than herself. This wasn't just a rescue anymore. This was the beginning of a connection between two worlds, two species that had found common ground in the love between a mother and child. The hardest part of their journey was over, but Maya sensed that the most important part was just beginning. 2 weeks after the reunion, Maya's life had become something she never could have imagined. Every morning, she would wake up in her tent by Crystal Lake and check on Luna and her baby, who she had started calling Star because of the way the little one's skin sparkled in the sunlight. Luna was healing remarkably fast. Her injuries were almost completely gone, and she was able to move around freely now. More importantly, her ship's automatic repair systems had been working around the clock. Each day, more lights came back on, more systems hummed back to life. The craft was slowly becoming whole again, but Maya could see that Luna was worried about something new. The alien mother would often stand at the edge of the lake, looking up at the sky with an expression Maya had learned to recognize as deep concern. Through their growing ability to share emotions and simple images, Maya began to understand what was troubling her friend. Luna's people knew about the crash. Somehow, they'd received signals from the damaged ship and were planning a rescue mission. But space travel took time, even with their advanced technology. The rescue ship wouldn't arrive for several months, maybe longer. That left Luna and Star in a difficult position. The ship was becoming functional again, but it wasn't ready for space travel. They were stranded on an alien world with no way to contact home and no guarantee that help would arrive before winter made survival even more challenging. Maya faced her own impossible choice. She had kept Luna and Star's existence secret for 2 weeks, but she couldn't hide them forever. Other researchers used this area, and eventually someone would notice the strange lights and warm water around Crystal Lake. When that happened, everything would change. Maya had spent sleepless nights thinking about what would happen if the world learned about Luna and Star. The government would want to study them. Scientists would want to examine their technology. The military would want to understand their weapons, if they had any. Luna and Star would become the most famous and most scrutinized beings on Earth. But Maya had also come to understand something important about Luna's people through their shared mental connections. They were peaceful, advanced far beyond humans in both technology and wisdom. They could offer humanity incredible knowledge about the universe, about healing, about living in harmony with the environment. First contact with Luna's species could change the world for the better. The decision came to a head on a cold October morning when Maya heard helicopters in the distance. Someone had reported strange lights in the area, and a government research team was coming to investigate. Maya had maybe an hour before they arrived. She ran to Luna's ship and found the alien mother teaching Star to walk on the warm shore. The baby was taking tentative steps, her little hands reaching up toward her mother for support. It was such a normal, beautiful moment that Maya almost couldn't bring herself to interrupt it, but she had to. Maya showed Luna mental images of the approaching helicopters of government officials and scientists. Luna's large eyes filled with understanding and something that might have been resignation. She had known this day would come. Luna gathered Star in her arms and looked at Maya with gratitude so deep it made Maya's heart ache. Through their connection, Luna shared what felt like a final message. Images of her home world, her people, and a promise that they would never forget what Maya had done for them. Then Luna did something that surprised Maya completely. She walked to her ship and returned carrying what looked like a small crystal device. She pressed it into Maya's hands, and immediately, Maya understood what it was. A communicator, a way to stay in touch across the vast distances of space. Luna was giving Maya a choice too. She could come with them when the rescue ship arrived, leaving Earth behind to explore the stars. Or she could stay and become Earth's first ambassador to an alien species, using the communicator to help build a bridge between their two worlds. Maya looked at the crystal device, feeling its gentle warmth in her hands. She thought about her life on Earth, her work with wildlife, the family and friends who would never understand where she had gone. Then she thought about Luna and Star, about the incredible civilization they represented, about the potential for humanity to learn and grow from contact with them. The sound of helicopters was getting closer. Maya made her decision. She helped Luna and Star into the ship and watched as the damaged craft sealed itself for underwater travel. Luna had shown her that the ship could hide beneath the lake's surface, invisible to human technology. It would wait there until the rescue ship arrived, safe from discovery. Maya kept the communicator hidden in her jacket as the government team arrived. She answered their questions honestly up to a point. Yes, she had seen strange lights across the water. Temperature in the lake had been unusual. No, she hadn't found any debris or evidence of a crash. The investigators spent 3 days at Crystal Lake, taking measurements and samples. They found nothing conclusive, just a few unusual mineral deposits and some unexplained electromagnetic readings. Eventually they left, writing the incident off as a probable meteor that had completely vaporized on impact. That night, Maya stood alone on the shore of Crystal Lake, holding the crystal communicator as it pulsed with gentle light. Deep beneath the water, Luna and Star were waiting for rescue, safe because of Maya's choice to protect them. Maya had given up the chance to explore the stars, but she had gained something perhaps even more valuable. She had become the guardian of the most important secret in human history, the keeper of a friendship that spanned the galaxy. Months later, on a clear winter night, Maya felt the communicator grow warm in her hands. She looked up to see lights. In the sky that weren't stars or planes, Luna's people had come for them. Maya watched the rescue ship disappear into space, carrying Luna and Star home. But she wasn't sad. She knew this wasn't goodbye. The crystal in her hands pulsed with received messages. Images of Star growing up on a distant world, of Luna sharing the story of the human who had saved her child. Maya had helped write the first chapter of a story that would connect to worlds forever, and she had learned something important about herself in the process. Sometimes the greatest adventures happen not when you leave home, but when you choose to stay and protect what matters. The stars had never looked so bright, and Maya had never felt so connected to the infinite possibilities of the universe.